we're told if there's any body part that is recognisable, say ear, nose, we have to bring it in and not touch it. So bring the police and the coroners back to retrieve anything that's recognisable. This had to happen about 3 times during the cleanup process.
Welcome to Crime Scene Gold Coast with Guardian Criminal Law. My name's Mark Savick. I'm the Principal of Guardian Criminal Law, and we'll be bringing you podcasts weekly. A variety of topics that can be very sensitive, so please be careful when you're listening, and if you need any assistance at all, we'll include a Lifeline number at the bottom of the page. We really appreciate you subscribing and liking our podcast channel. You can listen to us across most social media platforms, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and you'll find us there. We look forward to bringing you many episodes in the future. On this episode, we've got Gary and Bree, a father and daughter team from PHJ Cleaning, and they have a specialty in forensic cleanup. So there'll be some interesting topics to talk about. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. How are you guys today?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Good?
Yeah.
Gary, I just wanted you to explain to our the viewers and listeners to our podcast a little bit about your time in the police force. I understand that you rose up through the ranks in the police force and that you worked as a detective in the police force.
I went into plainclothes very early in my career, much earlier than probably the majority do. So of my 13 years in service, I probably did 11 years in plainclothes.
Okay.
I achieved the rank of sergeant at 11 years service, which at that time was fairly unique. My career, I guess, looked promising, but I got approached by a private company to leave, and the offer was a bit too good to refuse.
Okay.
So that was my reason for it. I really enjoyed police force, and I got a lot of satisfaction out of some of the things I've done there. I then took up a role. I became a national security manager for this company, and that took me, or they called me actually the Australasian manager. It took me to Fiji and New Zealand too, and I held that for a long time, but I didn't get as much enjoyment out of that as I did out of policing, and I was away from home a lot. So that's the reason I went into purchasing my own business and maintaining that.
Where did you start in the police force? Did you go to the Goulburn Academy in Goulburn?
No, Academy was at Redfern when I started. It's that old.
What
that
year,
long
mate?
ago.
What year?
1978.
And how old were you?
22.
Okay, so this was pretty close to your first job. This is your first career move.
No, it was actually my third at that stage.
So what did you go through before then?
I worked as a clerk for Ford Australia in Sydney initially, and then I moved back to my hometown of Taree and worked as a clerk for the local council.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what drove you to go and join the police force?
Probably escape from Taree.
Okay. Where did you escape to? To Redfern?
No, I was initially stationed at Newtown. Redfern was where the academy was, so in those days, you only did 10 weeks. I think, I can't remember, 10 or 12 weeks. And then the first station was Newtown, which I ended up being stationed at 3 times.
So this was in the late 70s, early 80s?
Yes.
You were in Newtown?
Yes.
It's a different place now.
Very different, very different. It was a rough, tough area at that time. It changed logistics. It became much more commercialised and yuppie type.
It's
feeling,
gentrified, I think they say now. Gentrified.
Gentrified, is that the term? But in those early days, there was a lot of nationalities in Newtown, Marrickville, and they were really hard-working immigrants, but they played hard too.
My uncle had a travel agency in the main street in Newtown at that time.
In King Street.
Yes, yes. He had his own travel agency in King Street at that time. We used to go and visit him and his family. They lived at Belrose up French's Forest way up on the northern side in the northern suburbs. And I can remember back then you'd drive through Newtown and it was like a different world. There's swirling paper. I remember there was lots of rubbish around. There were all sorts of undesirable-looking characters wandering the streets. It was dirty. It looked rough. It looked like a place where poor people lived. Not so much now.
No, very different now.
Yeah, it's sort of affluent. It's if I'm allowed to say it, it's a gay community now, which didn't exist at that time. There was a couple of early opener hotels with 6 o'clock opening, and they were always full.
And what sort of you were policing down there? What sort of issues did you mainly have around Newtown?
There was a lot of violence, so a lot of assaults. There was a huge juvenile problem, which seems to be around the country. There was a lot of stolen cars end up in Newtown. They didn't necessarily get stolen from Newtown, but the youth used to come back there to drop off their cars. Okay. They call juvenile escapees, they call them absconders, and we were always locking up absconders.
Oh, you were finding them in Newtown, so that's where they would gather.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Tell me, what is the difference? What differences can you identify between policing then and now? I've just been having some discussions recently with people about community policing and the sort of role that police occupied, say, back in the 70s, early 80s, and how that's dramatically changed, where police used to, it seemed to me, used to make decisions on the ground far more easily rather than going to a superior and actually make a decision about somebody. And to make it a direct example, my uncle, who's passed away many years ago now, and he's a lovely man, but he loved a drink. And I can remember the police encountering him, like sleeping on the side of the road in the car with the car parked askew towards the gutter. And one officer would get in the car, shuffle him across, drive him home. They knew exactly where he was and make sure he got into bed, and then the next day come and give him a dressing down and tell him what an idiot he was. So that just wouldn't happen these days.
Absolutely not, no.
We were always taught that we had a discretionary power. Now I think there's so much accountability that they're scared to exercise their discretion.
Yes.
And that's to the detriment of the whole economy, really, because there's incidents. If your uncle went to sleep in the car, he was obviously drunk, and he must have got in that position half driving.
That's right.
But did he do any harm? No. Maybe that was lucky.
Yes.
But they gave him a chance. They wouldn't be game to now.
No. I recall one of my early jobs that I had. I was 19 and I ended up working as a security in a hotel in Derby in northwest Western Australia called the Spinifex Hotel. It was sort of rumoured to be one of the roughest hotels in the country at that time. They reckon the Roebuck Hotel in Broome was the roughest. It was like a full-time open boxing ring. And so 6:30, 7 o'clock every evening, and Sergeant would come in and he'd walk through the hotel. And he would be picking out guys and he'd be going, "Harry, you're supposed to be at dinner in 15 minutes' time. Finish that schooner and get the hell out of here." Sometimes you'd see him grab someone by the collar and actually pick him up and be having a word to him and taking him out. He's usually putting him in the car and taking him home. And it was like his round at that time of the evening to go and find out where the potential troublemakers are, because he knew that if he'd left them at the pub, he'd be getting a call in 3 or 4 hours' time for a domestic violence between him and his wife having an argument because he spent all the money and come home drunk, or for several other reasons. And he would take care of it there and then. It wasn't about waiting till the problem occurred and then having to deal with it and going through a process. But there's too much accountability these days.
That's doing two things. One, you get local knowledge when you work in an area for a while, but it's also proactive, and rather than just reactive policing. It's good common sense, but are you allowed to apply that now? Unlikely.
I don't know. I had a funny experience with a police officer. At least he said he was a police officer. Maybe he wasn't. I didn't see his badge. But I was going on a hunting trip with three other fellows, another fellow and our two sons. And we're off on a hunting trip, and we ended up stopping in a little place. It's west of here, near a place called Texas. And from there, we had about 10 kilometres to go to the property that we were staying on. It was all backcountry dirt roads. And there's a little place, and it's like a one-horse town. There's a side street off the main road, which I think was dirt there too. And on that street, there was a police station. I think there was two houses and the pub down the bottom on the right-hand side. So we decided to stop and have a drink at the pub. And all of us used to drink VB schooners. And he said to the guy behind the bar, we'll have some, 4 VB schooners. Or no, it was 2, and then the kids had a soft drink. 2 VB schooners. And the bloke, the barman said, I haven't got much left in the keg, actually, guys. There's not that much left in the keg. And my mate said, we might just drink the rest of that.
Why not?
And I said, what are the police like around here for drink driving? And there's a guy sitting at the bottom of the bar, and he says, and he's drinking, and it was probably about 11 o'clock in the morning, midday. It was early. We arrived to get to the property.
Yeah.
And he looks up and he goes, you'll have no problem with that today, mate. And said, okay. And said, you sure about that? And he goes, well, I'm the copper and I'm here today. so that was his day off,
Yeah.
We weren't getting drunk or anything, we just wanted to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But not a bad approach.
No.
Showing
Not at all.
that they are human.
Exactly.
We were.
Yeah. And so you had the career. How long was the career in the police force, Gary?
13 years.
How old were you? 22, so 30, late 30s, 35.
Yeah, late there, about when I never thought about the age then, but it's a long time ago. 13 years, and I just got an offer that was a bit more money. I moved to the Gold Coast in 97, buying management rights, and then I don't know whether you know much about management rights. Generally people don't last in that for much more than 3 years.
Why is that?
Because it's a 24/7 business, and you're dealing with a lot of issues. You've got a job to do, but you're dealing with people, and some good, some bad. You've got it, and in my case, I liked it, but my wife didn't. So I had to find another business. I'd already started working for myself, and I had to find another, and just this business was for sale. Was nothing like we have it now, but it was a business that was for sale that looked like a reasonable investment.
Okay.
So that's
and
how I went to
Bree, what about you? What's your lead up to being in the cleaning industry? I know you sent me some interesting notes by the email about how you ended up working with Dad.
Yeah, it was an accidental thing that never foresaw this happening.
So how long ago was that for you?
8 years ago. Yeah, 2014.
And what was on before then? So before you started with Dad?
Yeah, so I've got a background in recruitment and HR. So I was managing recruitment agencies for about 10 years after university. And coincidentally, the same week, Dad had a stroke, and that same week I got made redundant from my job, and Dad needed an extra urgent assistance just to keep the business going, so just keeping the momentum whilst he recovered. And I had management experience. I thought I could just keep the wheels churning until he recovered, and then just made the decision. Dad was contemplating retirement anyway around the same time, so we just thought maybe that might have been, destiny maybe.
You've decided not to retire though, mate.
She brought me back. I was retired for 6 years.
Yeah. How was that?
I had too much idle time. So to come back
Okay.
wasn't so hard. I found it it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Okay.
It's nice to be able to get up in the morning and not have anything to go to, but sometimes you just want to go somewhere.
I got a bit slack after my ex-wife and I went through a process where we sold a business of ours, and we ended up being financially quite well off for that immediate time. And I decided to take a step back and be semi-retired and only work a little bit. I didn't have enough hours in the day to do all the stuff that I like doing. Because I hear of some people, they retire and then they need to go back to work because they get bored. I think my dad might have been a bit like that. They had to force him to retire when he was 72. And now in hindsight, we found out he wasn't really 72. It was more like 77. And they forced him to retire.
Yeah.
And they must have been trying to do it for a while, because when they finally got him to retire, they had the biggest party you've ever seen at the local workers club. There was hundreds of people there.
Wow.
And I think it was just to make sure there was no way he could make a comeback.
So it
there was
really
just
ended with a bang, and then that's it. Yeah.
And then he was one of those retirees that I think he was bored.
Yeah.
He never took up anything, like he didn't go fishing or have any of those interests. He's always been a worker all his life.
Yeah.
Whereas with me, when I've got time, I haven't got enough time for all the things that I like to pursue. So so I'm not sure that I love the work. I love coming to work and doing the work in the community.
Yeah, well then it becomes that, doesn't it? You're back in the workforce for a passionate reason, not yeah.
That's right. There's got to be a driver there, other than just the financial driver.
Yeah.
It's stimulating for your brain too to work and have to apply things rather.
Absolutely. But I could spend all my days sailing around and going spearfishing and skydiving and all of those things and be really really content.
That sounds good too.
I can be really content doing that.
Yeah.
How long's the business been going for then?
It has been in operation on the Gold Coast since 1975. Gary was the third owner?
Yes.
Yeah.
The PHJ stands for Peter's Hydrojet, and that was the name of the business when I bought it. The original owner was Peter Vagotis, that was the first person to bring what they call extraction equipment into carpet cleaning, water damage carpet cleaning, not water damage, water cleaning. And he introduced that to the Gold Coast, and he called it Peter's Hydrojet because that was the name of the machinery, hydrojet cleaning. He sold it only 2 years later to a guy named Merv White, who kept ownership of it for 23 years, but still calling it Peter's Hydrojet. And then I bought it off Merv in 2000. And then I got sick of being called Peter, so I just shortened the name to PHJ.
Okay, so the clients would think you're Peter.
Yeah.
You could have always changed your name to Peter.
I could have done that, yes. Yeah.
That was another tactic.
Yes.
Yeah. So now you guys are involved in forensic cleanup in your business. How did you get introduced to that? That's pretty specialised type of work. So what happens? Do you put out a expression of interest to somebody who says that there's this need for something, or do you get a phone call?
We do as a whole disaster cleaning. So majority of our work is actually flood damage restoration. For example, the big floods we had February last year. We've been still flood out today from that.
So
flood damage
around northern New South Wales, or
that was pretty widespread storm, but northern New South Wales was a big part of our cleanup. So under that banner of disaster cleaning and coming up under Google mostly, we did just start getting inquiries for crime scene cleaning, not realising that there isn't actually anybody that does that on the Gold Coast back then. Yeah, so we accidentally really got into it. I believe in business never saying no. We're always giving something a go. You never know what opportunity might arise. So that is how we got into it. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I think that I should sort of mention this today. We're probably be going to talk about some fairly sensitive topics because you're exposed to some very sensitive issues in your job, and that could be upsetting to some families. So we're not going to discuss particular names, and we're not going to identify parties that were involved. But for any families that are watching this podcast who may have lost a loved one or been involved in an incident here around the Gold Coast, just a bit of a warning that it could be sensitive material for some people. So so they should be on the guard for that, and hit the turn off button if it's getting that way for you. Yeah. So what was the first job?
The first job was something I didn't realise was such a common occurrence on the Gold Coast. Someone that did jump off a building.
So suicides.
Yeah.
And we'll put a link on this podcast for Lifeline and suicide prevention assistance because I support that area.
Yes. So it was actually on Australia Day, and public holiday. Somebody had done that from quite a height in one of the buildings in Surfers Paradise.
Yeah.
And I wasn't the first business they had called, but they had called several businesses very desperate, for assistance.
Okay,
building managers. Yeah. And it was in the middle of the day, so it was daytime, open to the public, busy weekend on a long weekend in Surfers Paradise.
Wow.
So I felt their pain, and being disaster cleaners, I thought surely we can assist. And not realise I was probably in over my head a little bit, being quite inexperienced. My team were inexperienced in this.
Were you on the ground then, Gary, or were you off with your stroke?
This was in the transition period when Bree was coming in, and I decided to retire, and she was going to be my exit plan.
So you were pretty much by yourself on this one?
No, I was still on board.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This one, yeah.
So, but Bree answered the phone calls that day and decided to do it. We was instructing staff, but it was sort of out of that to Bree's credit, that she identified that one, it's a niche market, but two, we weren't qualified to do it.
Okay.
So she identified where there was courses being held, and all the training is American training, but it was conducted in Melbourne by, ironically enough, another ex-cop who got out of police scientific section to train for this type of
I'd
work.
like to come back to that and go back to, you got the phone call, you're feeling for the staff and management. We're on a hot day, on a middle of the day, Surfers Paradise. Several companies have said no.
Yes.
They are desperate. And I understand that it was a main public thoroughfare area that was affected.
Absolutely, yes.
The main foyer area was affected.
Yes. A person had fallen through there was a glass canopy in the middle of the reception area of this building, and
the person who had jumped from the building, from a high height, had come through the canopy, and was deceased. They were in the main foyer area.
Yes.
Yeah.
So part of we later did we did learn whilst doing this job. So whenever if there is there was sections of debris from both the building and the deceased everywhere, in quite a widespread area, and so the cordon off area was quite large. But by then, when we had arrived, there was quite a crowd around.
Okay.
Their public interest and
Was the media there?
yes, media, every flashing lights.
So media, fire brigade,
everybody,
ambulance,
you name it,
police.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when they release the scene. So we're told if there's any body part that is recognisable as an actual body part, we can say ear, nose. We have to bring it in and not touch it. So bring the police and the coroners back to retrieve anything that's recognisable. This had to happen about 3 times as we kept discovering things during the cleanup process.
So what, underneath furniture or in pot plants or
in a bush and
okay.
And we during this process there was lots of cleaning at a height, but the abseilers found it at risk to do their job whilst there was still biohazard there on the glass. During this process, actually forgot to during this process we got a phone call by the family of the deceased to say, I believe you're the cleaning company, just have to let you know, out of courtesy that my family member is HIV positive.
Oh, wow. So it's your first job and you get all of this thrown in.
Which I found,
far
during
out.
the commotion, what the poor family were dealing with, just to even think of that was lovely. But
to be considerate of others oh my God, that is really highly commendable.
That was really thoughtful.
There must be good
as the
people.
emergency services also learnt this, and the abseilers said there is no way I'm going up there to do what we have to do until you guys clear the scene. We're not abseilers, but they gave my technicians crash course in that. So
on the day,
we had to learn on the day under pressure to do some abseiling to clean what we have to clean. We also found other little parts, like recognisable body parts during that process as well while we're abseiling. Had to call them back in. So quite a large technical job for our first one.
How many hours are we talking about? So what time do you attend? What time?
To overnight. So we could call in the afternoon. We cleaned all night. And I remember, going the next day at 7 a.m, bringing the guys breakfast, still going at 7 a.m. in the morning.
And you have to be so thorough.
Very.
How do you know when you're done? What are the markers? What do you do? Go everywhere with a flashlight? Do you have a blue light? Is there some special techniques that you use?
Flashlight is actually a technique that we use just to train your eye to just one small section and go over it very, very thoroughly. In this one, it was actually more the glass that was the hazard. There was a lot of glass that we had to look out for, especially being in the foyer area of the hotel. But we have to be extremely thorough. So which a lot of it during the night we had to wait till the next morning to really do a thorough search before we could clear the scene. And
And when you had cleared the scene, walked away, all good? You didn't get a call back?
They were very, very happy with our job. We did get a lot of recognition from management of this hotel afterwards.
So then this job is the one that says to you, okay, there's a part of the market that needs to be serviced here. We've done it, so we can do it.
Because I was still upset that nobody on the Gold Coast was doing it at the time, and these poor people that were left in the lurch when things like this happen. Someone has to do it. I thought, why not be us?
Okay. And so then you identify that, and you and Dad have a discussion, I'd imagine. And you get on board. You go, okay. You can see the same vision.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but at Bree's instigation, she's managing me then, and she identified a course we could undertake, and so she and I went to Melbourne for a week. I think it was a 5-day course, and learned there's a lot more skills in it that we took out of that course. But there's the right chemicals to use, the right identification, and the protocols, which we didn't know, like how to not, well, you can't leave any identifiable part. That was
the biggest thing we took out of the course, I think, is never leaving a trigger. The psychological part of the job after you've handed it over is a big aspect for the family and loved ones. You can't leave anything that is recognisable to what had happened at the scene. For example, it might be impeccably clean, beautifully sanitised, but if you left one bullet hole in the gyprock wall, that's going to trigger the poor, loved ones what happened. So you're best even just leaving a square hole in the wall.
Okay,
ready.
so you just cut a square hole so it looks like there's an access point or something like that.
Yeah.
Then a plasterer will come and fix it up
what had happened there. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, neither had we. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then when you're cleaning up, what's done with all of the biohazard that there must be a special disposal process, or does that go to the funeral?
No, we're always there after the body is removed. We don't go there prior. So it's usually just the residue, which must be disposed of as contaminated waste. So the council has that facility. It's which they charge for, but we've got particular bins that we put even something we might have wiped blood up with. It goes into this bin as a clinic and disposed of as clinical
waste. That'd be
waste.
high temperature incineration or something, I'd expect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've got the correct clinical waste bins at our depot.
Yeah.
And they come and collect it.
Have you got ongoing training? Like, are you in a association of any kind? Is there a body that represents your industry?
It's an American association still. Okay. Unfortunately, there's not one on this country yet. Hopefully that it will come. But yes, every 12 months we get reassessed. From this American association. It's called ABRA, so American Biorecovery Association.
Okay, so you apply you adopt their standards, their training.
Yes.
So you've got something to answer to, and you've got a resource to bring into play when you need support.
Yeah, there's no Australian standard for this type of work.
Yeah.
So in the absence of a standard, you normally apply something from somewhere else, and in this case, it's their standard that we apply, and it's recognised as best practice.
Is it internationally applicable? Have you got similar standards in Europe and similar standards in other, Western countries?
I don't know. I don't know. This was the best one that we found. I think ABRA got an international face that exists all over the world. So I think a lot of the training that's done in Europe would be based on these protocols.
Yeah. And so you attend on suicides. Is there much of that occurring in Surfers Paradise in our high-rise area? Is this something that's more common than people would think?
It is more common than you think, but it's not. It's
not pandemic.
I'm talking maybe 2 a year.
Okay.
Would I be right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a weekly occurrence.
No.
Good.
Yeah.
And good. It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
A suicide as a whole, unfortunately, is a bit more common, but the balcony incidences. Yeah.
And you've attended other sorts of suicides, I imagine.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that is not that uncommon.
Unfortunately, that's a big part of our biohazard cleaning. Yeah, probably majority of our scenes that we clean up does come from suicide. Yes.
Does your work reflect the statistics that we hear about men and women? Is it predominantly men?
No, I can't say that. No, it is
not
what I've seen. No, probably even playing field there. It's just
it varies, doesn't it?
It does vary. The methods of suicide you see, are different for men than women.
What sort of things do you see?
So, for instance, all the hanging ones, unfortunately, are mostly men.
Okay.
The wrist cutting, mostly women. I've found that interesting. Yeah.
Drug overdose? You probably wouldn't attend on much cleanup for drug overdose. Okay.
There's lots of substance abuse ones, unfortunately.
The reason for that is that they're unattended. They're not known to be deceased for some time, and when the body fluids leach from the person, that becomes the contamination point. So even though the drugs are a relatively clean death, so to speak, the aftermath, if they're of 3 days or longer, are being undiscovered.
And so I've got this mental picture of you guys pulling up in a van, and you've got full hazmat protective gear. So you've got a full body suit, you've got a ventilator of some kind that you use, of some sort of mask that you use with canisters, and then that's the setup.
Yes.
And it still must take a bit of, I don't know,
what's conditions to work in for us.
Yeah, if it's really hot conditions in the summer, you walk into a scene like that, it must be very confronting.
Yes,
it is. The odor is quite horrendous. You never forget it once you've had it, and it's a fact of life. We decompose, but it's not a pleasant thing.
So the hardest.
The masks, they'll often encourage the staff to use Vicks or something like that to just even with a mask on, they've still got the smell there. And they've got to clean their equipment afterwards because it just permeates.
So the body's been removed, but it's the leaching out of bodily fluids. It's the decomposition. So it might be in carpet or on a floor, or and then that has to all be cleaned.
Yeah. So when we went to, I think the deceased was there around 2 weeks, but it was in the middle of summer, and and the fluids had gone. They had died on the mattress, but the fluids went from mattress through to
carpet.
Yeah,
so the fluids leaked through the mattress and dripped onto the carpet.
Yeah. So through the mattress and what's the secondary mattress called?
The base. The bed base.
So the mattress and the base, then the carpet to the underlay to the concrete slab. So all the way through.
So I'd imagine that so the mattress, the bed, all that gets thrown away.
Yeah.
And then the carpet gets cut out and the underlay gets cut out and thrown away. And then the concrete floor gets
So the only
sanitized.
way for odour removal is physical removal. There's no amount of cleaning chemicals, nothing that will get rid of the odour. Physical removal is the only way. Yeah.
So that often can't be achieved in concrete.
No.
So it sinks into the concrete. You can't cut the concrete out. So in those cases, you have to seal it. So you can trap it in.
Okay.
I've had another example where the smell was still there after the cleaning was finished, and they had floorboards, and it gets into the joins of the floorboards. So the same thing applies. You have to seal it.
What about that other one in Surface Paradise? That was how they discovered the body. There was dripping from the carport underneath the apartment, from the apartment above.
Okay.
The old
through the slab.
The old style apartments where you have a carport underneath.
Yeah. I'm with you.
And this particular case, I've got to be a bit careful, I suppose, but it went through a crack in the carpet, in the concrete, onto the possessions of another resident in the garage.
Yeah.
And so that's how they
had to seal it to clean. Yeah, to seal both sides of the concrete slab from the.
And that's how they identified that there was someone dead up there. There's some bodily fluids dripping.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my goodness! Someone's probably gone with their finger or something like that, thinking, "What is this? Oh my goodness me!
That would be horrible."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's in homes. Are there any times when there's been a home that's so contaminated that smells like permeated through so many different things, because of time that it can't be achieved? Like you just cannot achieve the sanitisation of the home. You can't achieve getting rid of the smell.
No,
Yeah.
usually you can,
Takes
but
time.
example, we've had a couple of instances where the death has been on tiles, and it gets into the grout.
Okay.
So you do have to take the tiles out. But
Wow.
it's a fairly bit, and then you've got to perhaps
It ends
seal
up
the
being a
concrete
complete
underneath.
demo job on the whole
Yeah.
property. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think that many people committing suicide think about what the outcome could possibly be, like what
No,
sort of
you're
burden
not in that
they.
frame of mind, are you?
No,
Yeah.
no, you're not. You're not.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you know, we were
It's-
discussing suicide with another guest, Mr. Tim Fisk, who runs a men's group here locally, and he was talking about his own contemplation of suicide when he was at his lowest, and saying that it was about him assessing that everybody else in his life would be better off. You know, I don't know, maybe if you threw guys like you into the mix and they think about look at what I'm going to do,
maybe have
the repercussions, because they probably don't think that far down the track. They don't think about what that repercussion could possibly be, and it's not a small one.
No, definitely not.
And then families to know that they've committed suicide and then been on their own.
Yeah.
Like,
and also it sounds but the cost as well. I mean, the cost involved in something like this isn't cheap.
Who bears the cost?
Exactly. That's where I was mortified that the poor families, that has to be a thing, and someone has to pay.
So at the hotel, so that first one you went to at the hotel, I didn't even think about this, Bree.
No, I hadn't either
I
until
thought, the hotel pays.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's always the most awkward part of taking a job like this. You have to say, I'm so sorry with what happened. Like they tell you the details, and you think, I'm so awful. Half the time they are crying on the other end of the phone. And you think, I don't mean to sound insensitive, but before I carry on with this job, who's paying? And you feel awful, but it's the practicality of it.
It's the reality of it. You got to know.
Business.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that first job at the hotel or the high-rise building,
Body Corporate ended up paying.
That would have been quite a big expense, because you had multiple technicians on the ground for many hours on a public holiday, working over their 8 hours, so you're probably paying double and triple time and all sorts.
Well, they get paid a penalty rate for this type of work too.
As well. So.
And if it becomes double time at a higher rate
so it's
anyway.
not a cheap episode for the poor people involved.
No.
So that's always a very awkward part of the conversation in an already awkward situation. But that is what I found more horrific, that this has happened to them. Half the time it is the property owner who died. So who wears the cost? And and unfortunately that does raise a bit of family conflict sometimes. And unfortunately it has been the reason for sometimes I've had to walk away from the job. And you feel awful, but
so are you in the position sometimes where you have to approach the executor of an estate to satisfy the bill?
Yes, we have had a couple of instances. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then sometimes it even is them that does call and book the job.
They're usually the better person to communicate with, because they're a little. They might be family, but they're usually appointed executive because they've got some responsibility, or they're accountable for responsibility.
Yeah.
There are other times where an insurance company will pick it up on the
very rarely
on a building insurance. It's
okay.
Occasionally they can claim insurance.
Who does the job? Who does the job if you guys don't get paid and you've got to walk away? Like in my profession, if I walk away because the people can't afford my services, there's a duty lawyer who's at court every day. There's a duty lawyer who looks after people, or there's legal aid that you can apply for a grant.
Unfortunately, there are I found that some poor domestic cleaners do take on the job, probably in over their head, that do it a lot cheaper. But which is why, unfortunately, I wish this industry was regulated, but they will find someone that will for a fraction of the cost. But
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you ever have to do cleanups involving cars?
No, that is something that we haven't ventured into. No, we do. We do the police vehicles. Yes, we do them. We have got.
So that is sort of crime and trauma. We've done police vehicles where they've had feces in the car,
back of the paddy wagon.
Or urinating or vomited. That.
Yeah, so we are
that sort of thing, but
we are preferred supplier for our local police to do that work.
Is that regular work? I'd imagine that'd be fairly regular work.
Yeah. So we do it for Gold Coast and the Tweed areas. Yeah.
Okay. So people's feces and urine and spitting and bleeding.
It was a big part of it did get a lot bigger in COVID times because of what we do, we did become COVID cleaners as well. So we did have
quite a few police cars.
A bit of a surge in cleans then. Yeah.
Okay. And so what about scenes where there's been like violence at the scene? So you've got people committing suicide, but what about scenes where there's been, like you said before, bullet holes or there's been weapons involved? Do you get exposed to that?
Yeah, we have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Strange as it may seem, the appearance, if your confrontation with appearance with blood and some matter looks horrendous, but it's easier to clean because it's usually fresher. So it's a
no odor.
Yeah, there's
right.
The odor in it hasn't had time to penetrate.
There hasn't
surfaces.
been a decomposition or anything yet.
Yeah.
Our cleaners actually prefer those ones. They're worse on the eye for the average person, but if they were to choose between, the polite way we put it is an unattended death or a fresh stabbing. They would take the stabbing any day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you address the issue of the mental health welfare of your employees?
One of the wife or partner of one of our staff was the first one to raise an issue with us. We were poor at it, but she came to us one day when this particular employee he'd attended 3 deaths in a week. She came to us saying that she's worried about him because he's just going home and drinking.
Okay.
And so Bree and I sat down and had formulated a plan, and we've decided that, by the way, he did 3 by himself. That was our worst mistake.
Yeah.
So now we never send anyone to a job by themselves.
Okay.
Any of these things. Yeah. Then we always try and have a debriefing with them personally afterwards. Much as they've got each other to talk to, that helps a lot. But we try and just talk it out, and if they've just get them to raise any issues if it is, and make sure that they are coping, or try and
debriefing.
Try and find a way.
Yeah, we have to prioritise that.
And counselling, do you have the counselling available? Do you have any other protocols in place? So you've got the debriefing, you sit down and have a discussion, just an open discussion.
Yes, we have got an external counsellor that they do have the contact details of. We haven't needed to tap into them too much. They're pretty good at chatting amongst themselves. It has helped that we do send them in teams now.
Is there a dark sense of humour associated with your work sometimes?
Our meetings can get a bit inappropriate at times.
Well, sometimes that can be a really good way of
and
coping,
on the job,
can't it?
And that's the way the police deal with it.
Yeah.
No, my mother worked in lockdown dementia care for about 35 years. And I remember she used to, once a year or so, she'd have a bit of a get-together of the ladies that all worked together. And Pete, I remember Pete, he was like the cook, he was a lovely man. And they'd have a get-together at our place, and I was in my teens, and I'd sometimes cook a barbecue for them. they were hilarious.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, they work in such adverse conditions.
Yeah.
Really, really taxing.
Yeah.
Day in, day out, day in, day out.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to them, and you can sort of pick up that they do actually love their job because
That's
they're
right,
doing
yeah.
something worthwhile.
Yeah.
And then they've got this sense of humour that
Yeah.
would be highly politically inappropriate and probably not to be aired on any podcast.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd be probably horrified at some of our family dinner table conversations. My sister works in the business too.
Okay.
So while you're eating, probably isn't the best dinner table conversation. And my mum's a nurse as well, so she's she doesn't hold back either.
No.
Okay.
But sometimes we gotta be careful if there's other people.
Have you ever had a matter where the person that you're cleaning up has got an association with a family member or somebody that works for you? Has there ever been that concern?
It's always a concern,
Like a connection
but
of some.
but I haven't had it.
Okay.
No, it had happened to you in the police, but not in this job. No. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you must have seen a lot while you were in the police force as well, Gary. So this is not that alarming to you, I'd imagine.
Oh, death is something you never get comfortable with. And the worst one I have in the police is because I knew him personally, and it was a heroin overdose, which is really clean, but it was the most confronting death that I've ever had to attend.
Yeah. So here on the Gold Coast, mostly suicide or mostly violent crime?
Unfortunately, probably mostly
Suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one, the one that did stick with me. Not many do get to me and lose sleep over it. I can separate myself, but it is a domestic violence, quite violent crime one that we did. We ended up not charging for it. We just did it as we couldn't. It was quite horrendous, and it was very, very violent. That stuck with me, and you hope you don't see too many of those ones.
So who was the victim? Was it one of the partners in a domestic relationship?
Yes.
Was
and the children involved, and I'm a mum, and it got to me and my staff. I was happy to pay my staff, but even my staff that went to this particular one said, Bree, there is no way in hell we're going to charge for that. This is just, we can't. We just want to do this for the family. And, and then other trades I had to get involved in that one, and they were all the same. I had to get builders and...
So everybody felt compassion in this particular case.
Which was actually ended up being a lovely community thing to see everybody being so compassionate about someone in the community, but it is one that I hope you don't see too many of.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a very public murder, and we don't want to do any more to identify.
No. I understand that. I understand that. And so, what's the future for you, Gary, in PHJ or Peter?
Thanks for that. Hopefully I'll get to retire again, but we'll...
Are you still enjoying your work, mate? Still enjoying getting up in the day and going to work?
I do, as a matter of fact.
He jokes, but he loves it.
Yeah.
And both of your daughters, so you get to spend most of your days with both of you girls?
Yeah, Hannah's part-time, but, we sit down, they come into work and we have a coffee together to start with and whinge about... better not say staff, but whinge about other people and
but you're together every day. You're together every day.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. And is your wife still working as a nurse, mate?
Yes, she is. Yes,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she. It was a late career for her. She only started at 50 or got a degree or a diploma at 50.
Okay, so the whole family is very valuable members of the community doing really important work. Thank you very much. That's terrific. It's a lovely story to hear.
Yeah.
There is a third daughter, and she works in the medical profession too. She works at one of the local hospitals,
Okay, so everybody's here at the Gold Coast?
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's fantastic that you're all working together. Thank you very much for being here today. We
Pleasure.
really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
us.
Thank you for
You're
inviting
welcome.
us, yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much for listening to another episode of Crime Scene Gold Coast with Guardian Criminal Law. We're enjoying bringing you these podcasts on a weekly basis, and we look forward to bringing you many more. We've got a Patreon page where you can subscribe. That'll assist us in bringing you future episodes, and also any money raised through that goes towards a youth help program that we're running. We look forward to your company for many months to come. Thank you.